175. When I met her, she was one.
Don't take much.
Right. When I met her, she was 175.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm used to 125 too.
Yeah.
She 5'6", 175, and she was the wrong color.
Right.
And I was used to
That part.
So I'm like, man, you messing up my whole flow.
Hi love. So welcome back to my channel. My name is Tanya and I post everything. I just post whatever I want. And today this story honestly just caught my eye, especially because I just made a video about the black church and how it has failed black women, but y'all didn't give me any love on that. You guys did not watch that video, so please go back and watch it, okay? Because it will have a lot of the points that I'll be saying today will relate to that video. But anyway, I digress. I just want to give a quick summary about this couple or about the interview before we get into it, in case some of you haven't watched it or haven't watched the full video. I know there's just small little clips floating around that I'll also be inserting, but let's just get an overview on who these people are and what the heck they're talking about. In the podcast that I will link down below, Steele acknowledges that she knew that her husband had a lot of infidelities during their 32 years of marriage, and she stayed. But anyway, so despite all of that, she stayed in the relationship, and she's basically giving us advice, and how God carried her through that, and that it is more important to stay in a relationship, in a marriage, to keep a family unit together than leave and not forgive, and that God carried her through all that. She also talks about having a spiritual awakening or spiritual transformation that influenced her decision into staying in that situation, that she heard God's voice to support her husband during all that tribulation. So the husband acknowledged that, also talked about how he suffered from substance abuse during the first years of marriage. He acknowledged that his wife supported him financially and emotionally, providing him with meals, basically being his mom during that time, and he is grateful for that. And the host, I like this clip and the host also ask them, what do you have to say to the people that are going to find this and, say that you're crazy? And she says that is why they're single. So it's better to be in a relationship like that than be single. So the main purpose of this whole interview was for them to show us and give us the tools, us people, the black people, the tools to stay in a long, happy marriage, and not to give up. And that is the things that we can face, so that whatever you're facing was not as worse as hers, so you have no really a good reason to leave. I think I got, that's the gist of the interview. So as you can expect, the interview went viral. A lot of people have so many opinions, such as myself. I thought an interesting video for me to do as a Christian woman as well, Anyway, within this video, I really want to dive deep into spiritual gaslighting, gendered expectation, the historical roots of female endurance within the black church. And I'm speaking about this diasporically. That's not a word. But just understanding that what happened, that just does not happen within the context of black American churches, but in the diaspora, the black church. So that is where I'm coming from. I'll probably also add in a verse debunking half the things that they were saying, because I feel as Christians, there's a lot of misinformation that is happening right now, especially during these days. I don't know what's happening, but a lot of things need to be cleared up, because people in the comments were like, are the Christians okay? Are you okay? Is this the God you serve? Because I was I don't blame them, because it's is this the God that we serve? Anyway, so when it comes to spiritual gaslighting or gendered expectations, in the black church, men are often seen as the leaders, right? We are supposed to cater for the leaders. They never let you forget, right? Especially when Paul is because a man was made first. Men are often celebrated for the bare minimum and also for overcoming Jezebel. If you catch what I'm dropping, I don't know. It's a slang. It's a Black American saying that I just forgot right now. But are you catching I forgot, hey? Are you Catching what I'm dropping? Someone tell me in the comments. If the roles were reversed, she would be the Jezebel that he needs to be saved from. She is the problem and he needs to get away from that. You understand what I'm saying? But because the roles are not reversed, she is praised for enduring and for praying enough so that he can turn into whom she wants him to be. Women are expected to endure their pain silently and gracefully. Stick by your man. Like the way they are framing this podcast or this story is supposed to show us that that is the standard. That's how we're supposed to be for our man, right? Kaylee, I hope I'm saying that correctly, Kaylee framed as being noble and long-suffering and godly, while her husband's journey of all these things that he was doing is seen as brushed off as just like a minor detour in his road to redemption, right? In fact, the term grace has now been code for women accepting humiliation, betrayal, and emotional trauma and abuse. And what's even worse is that Kelly responds to all this negative, feedback that she's getting as women being bitter for being single, right?
What would you say to the women that may be looking at this and say, that's that nonsense they talking about?
Well, I would say that's why you're single still.
Oh.
Because I'm sure somebody had been in your life already. You didn't want to give the investment for that person to become somebody, and then you lost them probably a long time ago. And you should have just worked with them from the beginning and just worked out the kinks and worked it out, because a man can always build.
And I say this with all due respect. You don't marry a man and then turn him into a man worth marrying. I understand that there are men that are not finished products. They may not be where they need to be financially. But as far as character is concerned, he needs to already be there when you say I do. A man should not come to you as raw clay, needing for you to mold him into a man. That's a job his parents should have done. That's the job that he should have done prior to you getting there. Well, she's talking about y'all want a ready-built man. Yes, when it comes to that, absolutely. What's the point of a vetting process if you're marrying a man who isn't what you want? With this logic, you might as well just pick a man at random. Now, this is what I will say, because I'm a dating coach and not a therapist. This is the result of her own personal trauma. In this interview, she describes how her father cheated on her mother, and she thinks that her mother should have made it work with her father. I feel like she's trying to make right what she felt was made wrong in her childhood. I feel like you're trying to heal your inner child by doing what you feel your mother did wrong. But your mother leaving her cheating husband was the right thing to do for her. Wives don't ruin families by leaving cheating husbands. Husbands ruin families by cheating on their wives.
Which just shows the internal spiritual gaslighting that she has, right? Because she feels like, everyone else is wrong for saying that she should leave. They are angry and, bitter because they're single, because there's nothing worse than being single. Like, she would rather, feel that being in that situation is just 10 times better than being single. Okay, let me just drink my water. It's just sad because regardless of quality in the Black church, it is so better to be married than be single. And I see this every time. I remember I went to Zimbabwe last year. People praised me more for saying that, oh, I'm married. I haven't finished school, but that was like a bigger achievement for me at the church, that I was married. It was like, whew, she's married. At least she don't got her degree yet, but she's married. So that's, you've done it in life. You've reached the goal, and to my other, youth counterparts who weren't, that's the prayer request. Does any youth have any prayer request? Marriage, because people see how people are treated within the church when they are married, especially women, not men. Men, they can reach 40 years, but as soon as a woman is 40, in her 40s in a Black church and not married, question mark. Why is that? Women believe that it's better being married than being single. That is what we are taught from the beginning, especially when it comes to sex talk, sex education within the church. It's never, and it's so sad because I remember vividly learning in my youth classes that, get married if you have this sexual urge. Just get married, and that's the solution to everything, right? So that was the motivation for a lot of men, young men and women, to get, to get married, because they wanted to, have sex, because people would know in the church that these kids are, engaging in sexual activities without being married. And instead of encouraging them, there's so many other routes you can take. They would encourage them to get married. And then they'll get into these relationships that are just so violent and nasty and ungodly, because it is just better, for them to be married, than to be single and be sexually active. Only that, my church is one that has just a lot of activities for people. And I remember I go to Seventh-day Adventist Church, by the way, if you're not sure which church I'm a member at. There's just a lot of things, from the kids. We have this thing called Pathfinders. There is Adventurers. There's a lot of programs. We have a lot of programs, right? And I remember specifically not the single people complaining when I was younger that there's never any programs for single women or single men. You know what I'm saying? Like, people were even afraid to even talk about it. It was always like couples camp this, couples retreat, couples this, couples, would have those days on Saturdays where there's just lessons all aboard. Like, there's no like the usual structure. There would be like the youth go there and the couples go there, and then the children go there. What about the single people? And then you see a lot of them leave the church because of these reasons. There's a lot of things that are catered to married people in the church, which makes single people feel like they're not worthy to be in that environment, right? Which just makes marriage, again, be this ultimate goal in life, where it's like, you don't really gotta do that. You don't gotta do all that. You really do not. And moving on from that, the idea of women having to endure, that's not something new. And if we actually take a look at the verse in the Bible, Matthew 19 verse 9, it says that anyone who divorces his wife except for sexual immorality and marries another woman commits adultery. So yeah, there's no in the Bible that says that you have to suffer in pain, or that to be a testimony of how God is like teaching you something. Like, adultery is one of the reasons why you can actually divorce. And yes, it says God hates divorce, right? That is where people run on. And speaking of, infidelity, that is where the whole forgiveness part is really used in a way that is just incorrect and unbiblical, because it's only one-sided. Right? The woman is supposed to be the one that's forgiving and long-suffering and all that kind of stuff, and no accountability. And that's one thing the Bible is all about. Accountability. God forgives you, yes, but you're still going to face the consequences. And some of the consequences might be that you are getting divorced. Yeah, you're forgiven. The forgiveness doesn't mean you have to stay in that situation. I remember having this debate in my church before, like, what does forgive and forget mean? Because, obviously the men were like, yeah, but if I beat you up, you have to forgive me and forget about it, because apparently there's this verse, I forgot where it is, where it's like, you're supposed to forgive, like 7 times, I don't know what it is. And that was the excuse that they were taking, like, yeah, it's like, okay, sometimes, man. And what's sad is that grace is a lot of the times extended to the abuser, not the abused, right? And that's not only like the sad thing about it, is that us as young women can't even go to the older women at church for advice. I think that's always the saddest part. And I know I've seen this a lot, where it's like the worst thing you can do as a young person in a marriage is to go to an older person for advice. Don't ever do that. Because from experience, before I got married, I remember having this, talk thing with some ladies from church, and they were like, and you must always give your men sex. Even when you don't want to, they need it. I promise you, word for word, that was the advice that I got. Like, they need it more than we do. So you always give them, otherwise they'll leave. I was like, what? Thank God my husband's not crazy. I can't imagine being in that relationship where it's like, I have to give it to him or he will leave. What is that? What the heck is that? Is that my role, my purpose in this marriage? Is that like, it's absolutely, it's insane. And there's a lot of that right now where it's like the young people really have no one else to go to, and that's why I really want like more churches to have like therapists, like actual psychologists from the church, that are also like just very educated in these dynamics, and that we don't rely on just like the aunties to give us marriage advice, because some of the things they be saying, what's fun is that the verses always use wives submit to your husband. That's it. They don't continue. Husband, love your wives as Christ loved the church. And do we know what that means? What did Jesus do for the church? He died for the church. What did Jesus do when he was with the disciples? He knelt down and washed their feet for them. But when it comes to marriage, why is it the opposite? Why is it the opposite? Why are the women the ones that are kneeling down when Jesus was humble enough to serve the church, to love the church? I remember this favorite pastor, Pastor Catelo. I'm gonna link him down below. Watch his sermons. He just gets it. He really understands the Bible. He's like, you know what? The Bible is not only spiritual guidance, but it's also a historical book, which means that some things are mentioned as a historical accuracy of what used to be done, not what should be done. And some people don't understand that some things that are mentioned in the Bible are just a historical fact of how things were done. Doesn't mean that's how things should be done. You understand? There'll be a verse that'll be like, and Solomon has 700 wives, and that's an excuse for someone to have, claim Christianity and be like, but I have, like, that's just a historical fact. That is what happened, not what should be done. Otherwise, the Bible is now contradicting itself. Half the things that you think the Bible is contradicting of itself is because that's just a historically accurate thing that happened. It's a history book, not really what should be done. And a lot of people don't understand the Bible. They don't want to. They want it to fit in their own narrative and what they want it to be. It's time to definitely rewrite the narrative. Stop listening to advice like that. Clock it, okay? And the only way you can clock it is by reading your Bible, which I should start reading my Bible. Because the thing is why a lot of people are getting, misinformation, especially when it comes to the word. It is because they don't know the Bible. So they don't know what they're talking about, what they're defending. They don't know it. They just heard a preacher say it. They didn't even open the Bible themselves. They didn't pray before reading the Bible. You see that, all that. So therefore, you have your own ideas of what is right or what is wrong, and then you read the Bible and then you want to decide yourself. So I don't want this to get preachy, but like, it is what it is. I'm a Christian, so you're gonna get a sprinkle of that. All my videos are basically me coming also from the Bible perspective, but like, watching that just makes me sad because there's a lot of people watching that thinking that is what they're supposed to do.
I see this from a completely different perspective than most people do, and maybe the reason why is because I am an intercessor myself, right? This woman interceded on behalf of her husband. When you listen to the story from a spiritual standpoint, you understand this man was literally battling demons that were passed down to him. So that means these demons were strong, right? He was battling demons that his father battled and also that his grandfather battled. So these are demons that have gotten higher in rank as they've been passed down. And he's fighting these battles. These are demons that he could not have fought in his own strength. So the Lord sent him this woman who had the grace and the heart to fight this battle with him. So I want to read this scripture, Matthew 13:13, and those 13s, those repetition of the number 13 is prophetic for somebody because it's prophetic for me. It says, "This is why I speak to them in parables, because seeing they do not see, and hearing they do not hear, nor do they understand." And so the reason this scripture comes to mind when I'm reading the comments in this episode is because there are so many people missing the point, right? What I'm seeing in the comments is people who are hearing the parables of the Lord, but because they're choosing not to really see what is really being shown, they're choosing not to hear what's really being heard, they're missing the entire point. This is a woman who interceded on behalf of her husband. She went into war with her husband against these spirits, against these principalities that have been passed down. These are demons this man could not have overcome in his own strength. And it's very likely that there was no other woman who could have interceded on his behalf the way she did. She sowed a seed, and in faith, right, before she even understood what she was sowing, right, before he understood what was being sown, he didn't even realize he was under spiritual influence, demonic influence. She didn't realize that either until a good amount of time into their marriage. But the Lord was working on both of their behalf. And so I want to encourage people when they hear this, when they see this, don't look at it as a testimony of struggle love, because it's not that. That is the outward appearance. If you choose to only see it from that perspective, you will miss what God is doing, what God has done, and what he's about to do in this earth.
In order to be a good Christian woman, in order to be, the chosen one. I don't know what it is, but like that's just not it, and it's sad. But anyway, it is what it is. It is what it is. Tell me what you guys think about this video. I'm very interested in having this discussion. Okay, I want to give a shout out of the week. It is Right Side at right side KL5VJ. Thank you so much for commenting on my videos. I see you. Okay, and let's try to reach 20k, please, before this year ends. Yeah, tell me what you guys think about this video down below, and see you guys next time. Bye.